everyone, so today I wanted to share with you a way that I'm getting organised, and this is about organising my recipes. So I have a whole bunch of recipes that I love to cook when I get time, and this particular book is my sweet recipes, and I'm going to show you how I go about putting together a page, and also talk to you a little bit about the process that I go through to organise the recipes and why I'm doing it. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm going to stamp this stamp which says my favourites, but I only want it to say my favourite at the top. So I've put a piece of thick cardstock behind the page that I'm working on. This will just give it a nice firm base to be able to stamp on, because the pages before it have a lot of embellishment and would be quite uneven. And so I'm just covering up that little S at the end and inking up the stamp, and then once I stamp it down it will say my favourite without the S. And so the piece of paper that I use to cover up the S is actually one of the recipes that I'll be writing down, and basically I've kept a lot of sort of handwritten recipes or things that I've torn out of magazines and then used over the years in a folder with plastic sleeves. Now that folder is starting to deteriorate, and what I'd like to do is bring together the collection of recipes that are some of my favourites or my go-to recipes into the one place. And so I had these booklets, and they're from Kazaz, and so I decided that I would use them to pull together all of my recipes. So I'm doing one sweet and one savoury book, and this one is the sweet one that I've decided to work on first. So I've stamped the word ingredients. That stamp comes from a Kaisercraft collection. You can see the stamps at the top right there, and it has words like ingredients, methods, recipe, and then it has the whisk and a few different things. And so then I handwrite the list of ingredients and handwrite the method as well. So I just skipped forward onto that so you didn't have to watch that. I've got these letter stickers from Bella, and they're silver glitter and quite a small sort of size, which is perfect for this booklet because it's an A5, so you don't have a lot of space to work with. And then I'm just going to include the title of the recipe there. I've also cut out some teacups and a coffee cup from one of Chamel's paper pads, and I'll probably add a teacup or a coffee cup to the other side as well. So these two recipes that I'm planning on doing on these two pages do go great with tea and coffee, which is why I decided to include those as embellishments. I've also punched some pinked circles, yellow circles that you can see there just above the booklet, and they're from an Amy Tan paper, and it's a yellow paper with what looks like hand-drawn love hearts on it. So I thought that coordinated well with the tea and coffee cups that I cut out. And I'm not quite sure how I'm going to incorporate them. I just sort of have them on hand, and because the pages are quite colourful in this booklet, you don't need a lot of embellishment to make it look good, and I probably don't want a huge amount of embellishment on the pages, but it is just a matter of making sure that the recipe is there, because that's the most important thing, and then just adding a little bit of interest to the pages, and filling in the gaps so that it doesn't look like there's big gaps anywhere. So just playing around with the placement of that title there, and I've pulled out a few different stamps that I'm keen to work with as well. And basically the idea is to have a beautiful recipe booklet that I can go to, that can sit in on my kitchen shelf, and have all of those go-to recipes in one place, as opposed to some of the recipes that are in this booklet so far, or that I'm planning on putting in. Some are torn out bits of paper, like the one I'm using to mask off some of that stamp. Some are things I've pulled out of a magazine. Some are ones that are in recipe books that I have. So the idea is to have them all in one place so that it's just easy to grab, and it's not pulling down a big recipe book or trying to remember which recipe book that particular recipe was in. So I've got a few of those that I have enjoyed making over the years. Often enough, I won't include them in this collection until it's tried and tested, so I've cooked the recipe multiple times and I know it's going to work every time. I do love recipes that aren't temperamental like that, and so yeah, that's when I might include them in something like this. So the other thing you might be able to see on the right hand side of the book is a few bits of paper sticking out, and this is an example of the kind of way that the recipes have been collated up until now. So they're all on different colours of paper. Some of them are just torn strips of paper. Yes, and more recently in the digital age, I've started taking photos when I'm out at the doctor's surgery of a recipe in a magazine, and so some of them will even be on my phone. That's sort of where I go to get the recipe now. So pulling them all together will be lovely to have them like that. So I'm just using these circles that I punched out now to kind of fill in some of the gaps, and then there's also a gap in the middle of the page that I'm going to grab some washi tape shortly and try and fill that in as well. So just trimming off the circles that I've hung over the edge of the page, and then and before I start with the washi, I decided this stamp would look really good on the bottom right hand side of the opposite page. So I decided I want to get that down now. Just from a visual perspective, I just want to see the balance on the page and see whether I need to add more embellishment to the left hand side. I don't know why I felt that had to go down there, but I just felt like it would help me visualize things a little bit more. And I am a very visual person, so being able to see that on the other side and decide whether I was going to require more embellishment on the left-hand side or not. And I love that particular stamp. It's a Kaisercraft stamp, and I bought it years ago for card making. I think I bought it to make Christmas cards, and I found I've used it for a lot of different things, and it's just very elegant, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So now I'm looking at where I can stamp other images, and I've got this stamp which is actually a lemon stamp, and I'm just trying to look at where I can fill in a gap. The stamp itself has a lemon on the side, and then also the sort of cut surface of a lemon, and whilst lemon has nothing to do with this recipe, there is actually orange in the recipe, so I figure if I ink it in orange I can probably get away with stamping it there, and I think the cut surface looks quite good. The side-on shot of the lemon really does look like a lemon because it's a completely different shape, but I think it works okay. So I'm just adding this washi tape now, which is a perfect colour match for these pages. It's just a darker version of the blue the aqua colour that's on the pages, and I'm just putting a banner of that up on the top right hand side, and just trimming a little fishtail for the banner and adding that to the top. And so the idea is to sort of still stick with those key 3 embellishment areas that you often do in scrapbook layouts, but it's more sort of just filling in those gaps and having some similarities across the areas that you do embellish. So you can see that teacup has the similar colours to the areas of embellishment. There's yellow in the teacup, there's that sort of aqua sort of teal kind of colour, and now I'm looking at the other gap down the bottom because the washi is just going to overpower it if I fill the whole thing with washi. So I figure I can add, there's a knife and fork stamp on this set, so I'm just looking at adding the knife. The fork doesn't really make sense, but the Dayton zucchini cake could be cut with a knife, so that's sort of why I've included that. And can be served with butter. So I think my little note down the bottom there says, it's extra delicious if you add some butter to it. So, and this is one of the other things that I like to do with this recipe booklet or book, is to add little tips and things along the way. So it might be a particular recipe that you can switch an ingredient out, so I'll make a suggestion there, or it might be that it goes great with a cup of tea, which I wrote in the top right hand corner of this page. And now I'm just adding these enamel, they're really sort of epoxy or puffy stickers that I picked up quite a while ago on sale. I think they were $1 a packet or something like that, and I'm just using those blues to add some extra interest to each of those embellishment areas. And then I'm adding one of those pink circles over the top of that washi in the middle, and looking at one of the blue puffy stickers that I can add to that area as well. So I think that's it for that page. I'm pretty happy with how that turned out, and I just move on to the opposite page now. I'm looking at other stamps that I might be able to include, anything that's got small sort of stamps on there. And then I come across this one from Craft as well, and again, I can't think of the collection. It might be Limelight, but it has little love hearts and stars, and so I just pull out those three little stamps and decide that I'm going to just randomly stamp in some of the gaps that are around the page, just to fill it up a little bit more. So I think I end up using an orange one, similar to the orange, the same ink that I used to stamp up the orange, but also I use a watering can. So I think the orange is called Venetian orange, and watering can is a very sort of dark grey. But I think because the background was kind of soft, and I had embellished with sort of softer yellows, I didn't want to use a black, so I end up using that watering can, which is sort of a bit more of a muted tone, and it's the same ink that I used to stamp the lamppost on the right hand side. So just adding those stars just to give a little bit of interest. And the reason I decided to use the orange to stamp some of the stars was because the orange that I'd stamped, or the lemon in orange that I'd stamped in the middle of the page, was the only orange on the page. So by adding some stars all around the page, it kind of made it look like it went with the page and wasn't sort of just an add-on at the end. So just filling in some of the gaps, and then I'm happy with how that works out. So now looking at the recipe that's going on the right hand side, I've got some pink circles left over, I've got this washi tape, and I've got the coffee cup and the teacup. So I just place those where I think that they might go, and then start thinking about my title. So I've pulled out these letter stickers, and they're I couldn't even tell you the brand. I haven't had the package for a while, but they were just picked up at the cheap shop for $1 or $2 or something like that a long time ago, and I've always struggled to use them because they are different colours. So they're blues and greens, and I think some pinks, and they've got silver accents, and they have patterns on them that sort of go in all different directions. So if you're looking for some consistency in your lettering, you're definitely not going to find it with these stickers. And I felt like I could get away with just mixing up the colours in this particular title, so I just decide that I'm going to try and use these up, and just start sticking down the letters for this particular title. Now, I didn't have enough to spell out the whole recipe title, so it's a raspberry and almond gâteau, but I did have enough to have raspberry and almond, and so I decided to stick those down, and then I'm just going to handwrite and gâteau at the end. So just it takes me a little while to do these because I'm thinking about how I can make sure I mix up the letters so I don't have two the same right next to each other, or directly under each other, that kind of thing. And then I just spell it backwards because I know I want it to be right justified against that coffee cup, particularly the word almond. So it's sort of like the raspberry is left justified and the almond is right justified, but they end up being in a very similar kind of space at the end. So now I'm looking at writing the gateau, and I do this with my stained marker, and I find that this marker is really good for, it's sort of got a brush nib to it, and it's really good for like writing sort of, I guess, a bit more of a flow writing. My writing is not the neatest, so I find it really helps to make your letters flow smoothly, and it's really smooth on the page. So it's actually a Sharpie brand marker, and it's called Stained. So I grabbed a couple of those a while ago, and I tend to use them for something a bit more bold. So I'm just stamping down the ingredients as I did on the previous page, and I decide, because there's no lines here, I'm going to underline. And then once I decided to underline on the right hand side, I decided that those two words, the ingredients and the methods, should be underlined on the left hand side. Because I stamped those in a blue, I just grab a different marker to underline those there. So now I'm looking at getting the stamp ready for the other one, and again off camera I will write that out, and I've stamped and underlined the method and then written out the method section. So I'm obviously not going to fit that teacup in that I originally put down the bottom, but that's okay. I'm happy to have a teacup on one side and a coffee cup on the other. But now I'm looking at embellishing using the similar things that I embellished the left hand side with, one of those being the washi tape, but I don't have as much space, so I'm just trimming that washi tape in half just so that it has the colour there down the bottom, and it doesn't matter that it's a little bit thinner to me as long as it's sort of coordinating. So then just adhering that coffee cup down, and I'm using some double-sided tape to do that, and I'll just continue embellishing similar to what I did on the left hand side with the washi, the pink circles and some of those epoxy stickers, and yeah, just adding that to the coffee cup. The coffee cup had a colour that wasn't used on the rest of the layout as a star in the middle, so I just decided to cover that up with one of those blue stickers so it coordinates really well. So you know, I think this is a great process. Unfortunately, Kazaz no longer do these coloured journals with the beautiful pages in them, but they do plain ones, so you could definitely start from scratch and do your own. Or you may come across a product that could be used in a similar way. I decide that the circles are not going to all fit on the page this time round, so I do actually punch a love heart out of the circle to add to some of the areas, or at least one of the areas, I think. So I hope you enjoyed this video about getting organised with your recipes. I think it's a fun and creative way to marry some passions of mine, so I love cooking, and also I love obviously crafting, so it just kind of really helped me to pull together some of my recipes. I'm looking forward to actually completing the book, but I've still got a way to go, and at the end I might even give you a flick through in a video so you can see all of the wonderful recipes that I've managed to pull together. And I'm super excited to sort of have all of these recipes in the one spot and start getting organised with those. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos about getting organised and other content, and I'll definitely include some still shots at the end